The next thing which I like is, this is the definitive touring king for me, at least in the single cc category. So let me give you an example. So today I had been to Dhruvatare, which is one of my favorite restaurants on the Bangalore highway. And typically whenever I take any of my other bikes, or whenever I have taken my other bikes in the past, it's a 2-hour ride from my house to the restaurant, and it's a 2-hour ride back, right? On any of my other bikes, because of the way they are and because of how I ride them, I would have had to stop at least once, just for me to get down and stretch my hands and legs a little bit. Whereas with this bike, with my age of 43 years and also my height of about 100, I really don't feel like stopping, or I don't feel the need to stop. I can continuously ride this for 2 hours without breaking a sweat, or with no aches in my body or my joints or my hands or legs or limbs or whatever. Very comfortable bike, and it's a master and a commander on the highway. So that was one of the things I wanted to mention. Hand in hand with that goes the fact that it's got a supreme ergonomics and rider's triangle, including a supremely commanding view of the road at the height at which you sit, and basically the height factor. Yeah. So if you are actually behind a car like a very low car like an i20 or even a Zen, for example, not that you see too many of those on the roads these days anyway, but you can literally look over the top of those cars to see what's ahead of you. So the height at which you sit enables you to do all that. And the next one is power play. I call this the power play. So the power of this engine, it can take you places on the highway. So passes, overtakes, filtering on the highway. So you're stuck behind a big lumbering truck that's refused to budge and allow you to pass. You just drop a gear and just rev the accelerator, and you just pass him in an instant, and in a jiffy you just leave the truck behind in your rear view mirror and you're gone. You're gone. That's one of the things which is possible only in this type of a bike and none of the other bikes that I owned. Say for instance the CBR 650F. What else? Okay, nature access and off-roading. So basically with this bike I can access a bit of nature, like the place where I'm standing currently, and this is something which I covered before as well. With none of the other bikes, arguably, and you can argue this and debate this, that even people in Splendors and Activas come to places like this. You're right, they do. Not disagreeing, but with a bike like this, it just becomes that much more easier for you to access places like this. So I am right now in this place all alone, and if I want to spend some time here alone, just enjoying and soaking up all this nature and this beautiful sunlight and all this green chlorophyll and the color of the mud and everything, if I want to spend some time in solitude and being a bit thoughtful and contemplative and meditative, these kind of bikes are the ones to get you to places where you can do all of this. So that's one more tick in the box for me. Another thing with this bike is it is supremely moddable and accessorizable. So you can put all sorts of accessories, every imaginable accessory on this. So what I have personally put is, if I start from here, I have put these Mad Dog headlights, I have put this light protector, I have put these crash guards, I have put this TFT protector thingy, I have put this mobile mount, I have put these saddle stays from Adventure Carbon Racing, I have put this back rack from Automel, and also the JV top box. I have put the rear tire hugger. All sorts of things I have added onto this bike, and this just makes the user experience to go to the next level in terms of usability. Very customizable, and this bike is now completely my own. It is exactly what I want it to be because it's so customizable, right? This is one very good thing which I like. The fit and finish, the next one. The quality of the fit and finish on the KTMs has always been one of its marquee features. So if you look at the quality of these switches, the way this feels when I press it, the way this feels when I turn on the indicators, the way the horn feels, the supreme feedback and the squishiness of these four-way directional buttons, all of this is amazing. Not a creak, not a whimper out of them when I use them, absolutely work as designed and feels top notch for the money you pay. The next one is the big bike feel, and so I covered a bit of this in one of my previous points. So what I mean by that is, with this I actually don't feel like owning, or I actually don't feel the need to own a Triumph Tiger or an Africa Twin or any of those big bikes in terms of the road presence or the highway presence. This is more than capable of giving me all that. Look at the dimensions of this bike, just look at it. And even when I'm on it, it actually feels very substantial. I have never felt a sense of lack or a sense of want that I should be sitting on a bigger bike on the highway when I'm on this. The next one is, it's a bit of a funny one. So this is one of those bikes which actually calls me to ride, right? So what I mean by that is, I categorize bikes in two categories. Ones that actually call you to ride. Basically what it means is, come Sunday morning or come an opportunity to ride, you actually are excited about getting on this bike and riding it. So it actually calls you. It says, come here, get on top of me, ride me. So this is one of those bikes which actually make me really excited to ride on a Sunday morning. Whereas with the other bikes, when I would blearily wake up from sleep after hitting the alarm, and I would actually think about getting on top of the bike, those weren't bikes which actually called me to ride. And more often than not, I would just leave them home and not even ride. Whereas this is a bike which actually makes me enthusiastic to ride. For whatever that's worth in terms of making sense, that's one for you. Service network. So given that this is actually has a partnership with Bajaj, and in fact for those who don't know, Bajaj actually has a substantial stake in the ownership of the worldwide KTM business, right? So Bajaj actually owns a substantial stock of KTM worldwide, and they have tie-ups with Bajaj obviously in India, because Bajaj is a major player in India, and because of that the kind of service network access which you get, no matter which part of India you're in, it is something which is almost like having a Bajaj. Basically wherever a Bajaj is, a KTM service center also is there in most places, or I think probably in all places. So that's an amazing peace of mind to have in place when you're actually touring on this bike, and especially if you're in any of the smaller towns in the country. The next point is a bit of a con which I have converted it into a pro. So what I mean by that is the height of the bike. So 855 mm is the seat height, not at all accessible in terms of sitting for the typical average Indian. So because of this, only people above 5'7" or so can actually mount this bike and ride it, and because of that, this is not going to be one of the common bikes that you will actually get to see on the Indian roads. So it's always going to be one of those bikes which are not very common to see. So that's a pro according to me, or a con according to some. You guys can decide. The next one is, and again this is something which I said earlier, this actually feels like a KTM for the mature riders and not something for the and it doesn't feel very immature or juvenile at all in terms of its overall look and feel, and even the stickering, which I think it could do with less of, but still it's not very gaudy, right? So it's a KTM for the mature riders. Anybody can ride this. It's really a bike which transcends all ages and all sensibilities, I feel, in my opinion. And finally, it's got a lot of plastics, right? This is a bike which doesn't have a lot of metal except for the frame. So everything is mostly plastic. The tank is plastic, the fairings are plastic, the side panels here, they are plastic, the dashboard and all of the lights and everything, they are plastic. The mudguard is plastic. All of this actually goes on to make this a very light bike. That's actually part of its allure. It actually becomes a very light bike to ride and to negotiate because of all these plastics. And God forbid if something happens to the bike, these plastics don't exactly cost a ton of money to replace, right? So that's one of the pros. Okay, so hope you guys are still here. Gosh, that was a really long list of the things which I like about the bike. So for those of you who are still sitting here waiting for more, thank you. You have oodles and oodles of patience, and thank you for being here so far. So now let's get into a list of a few things which I feel could have been a bit better, a few things which I did not like, the so-called cons list. So let me again get my trusty phone out with all the list of points I jotted down. Okay, let's start with the first one. So this is something which I mentioned as a pro in one sense, but it obviously is a con in for a lot of people: the height, the elephant in the room, the height. So even today, having ridden this for about 6 months, and I have now gotten pretty comfortable with the bike, and for about 4,500 kilometers, I am still very respectful of the height. So I am always scanning the ground for what kind of road surface I am on. So if there is a bit of depressed ground right next to where I am about to set my foot down, I do not do it there. I continue a bit further and then I set my foot down where the ground is level, because it is a tall bike. It is a tall bike. There is no beating around the bush. There is absolutely no disputing the fact that it is a very tall bike, right? So that's not exactly a con. It's a mere statement of fact, but it is what it is, for what it's worth. The second one is a bit of the mileage thing. So it always keeps showing me on the dash that I am getting a mileage of about 35. It always shows me I am getting a mileage of about 35 average fuel consumption. And with its 14.5 liter fuel tank, I would expect it to go really far without the fuel gauge dipping as quickly as it actually does. Somehow I don't get the feeling that the mileage is actually very truthful in terms of what it shows on the dash. And this is a feedback I have heard a couple of other very reputed reviewers mention. So it's one of those bikes where I wish the mileage could be a bit better. I don't really trust the 35 which it actually shows on the dash. The next one is the low end torque. Yeah, so this is something which is very widely publicized about this bike. Everybody who knows a little bit about motorcycling knows this already. The low end torque is appalling. There is just no way for me to sugarcoat this. The low end torque is appalling. So it stutters and stammers whenever you are not in the right gear. Unfortunately, it is a fact. I am not somebody who believes in the 14 tooth sprocket of the Duke 250 going into the engine casing. It makes me really uncomfortable. It makes me cringe. I am not going to do that. It has progressively gotten a bit better over a period of time of usage, but it still is a problem, guys. It's a very real problem. And the other thing which used to happen is, this bike for me used to stop in all sorts of gears and in all sorts of speeds. So even at 80 kilometers per hour, if I sometimes press the clutch to shift a gear, the bike would actually turn off. I don't really know what was happening. But in my second service recently, which I got done, they told me that they have updated some sort of a quick shifter patch on the software, and this is what was probably triggering the bike to stop at those kinds of scenarios. In my ride today, it seems to be a lot better than what it used to be before. I've had a couple of stops still, but it definitely is a lot better than what it used to be before in terms of abruptly stopping, which is pretty life-threatening as well in a way if you think about it, because I am at 80 and there is somebody behind me tailgating me, and if I try to shift down a gear and press the clutch and it stops, thankfully nothing's happened so far, but it can get really life-threatening, right? So that's one. The next one is, again, this is one of those things which is very annoying and I don't really understand why. The whole power parts catalog which they promised us, showing us all those juicy power parts in their catalog when they first released the bike. Some of the best ones are yet to make it to India. They are not at all here. Chief among which are those beautiful soft saddlebags which they showed. And even the back rack and everything, none of them are here. I don't know if if any of those will ever see the light of the day in India. There are a few minor ones, but not the really good ones which everybody wants. But I suppose it's an opportunity for some of our local accessories makers to sort of steal the show in terms of making something which the people want, and quite a few of these people have seized the opportunity really well by making very nice parts for these. So for example, Carbon Racing, one of my very favorite companies, they have made some very nice products for this. The Fantasia crash guard which is there, Zana crash guard, all sorts of people, Automel top rack, all these people have really made a killing in terms of coming up with very good accessories which are very reasonably priced. The next one is these grips, right? These grips, they are actually quite hard to hold, and they have all these little pimples or accents, and if you actually hold them without gloves, which happens quite a few times when I ride it in the city, within a very short time my hands actually start feeling all tingly, right? So but with extended usage of this and with extended holding of this, these edges have softened somewhat, but still the tingly palm situation resurfaces every now and then. So that's one thing which could be better. I suppose I could actually cover this up with some sort of a soft grip or something, which I'll probably do soon, but that's one thing which I wanted to highlight. The fan hum which I mentioned, so the fan keeps coming on, very loud fan, especially in city like conditions, it always keeps kicking on, but it's something which I have become a bit immune to. I hardly take any cognizance of it anymore, so I have sort of become numb to it, so it's no longer the kind of huge problem it used to be. The next one is, it should have had a provision for the stock center stand. So this doesn't have a center stand, and although I see a few aftermarket accessory makers having come up with a center stand, I am yet to see an elegant or a seamless integration of the center stand to this bike. I don't think it will happen given how the bike is constructed, but they should have definitely kept an option for the center stand. Especially it's touted as a adventure touring bike, and if you have to oil your chain or do something with your tires, the center stand would have been a very good thing to have. I am not quite sure why they overlooked it.